Today, on February 8th, 100 years ago, Harry Hoyt's The Lost World premiered. It is the most influential dinosaur movie of all time, and I don't think there's anything I can say about it that hasn't already been said before at some point. Just the title of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's 1912 novel created the name for an entire subgenre of fiction. Before Jurassic Park popularized the idea of genetically engineering dinosaurs, the go-to trope in any dinosaur story was some isolated place on or in Earth where prehistoric creatures had survived and formed their own ecosystem. Doyle even introduces the movie. I have wrought my simple plan if I give 1 hour of joy to the boy who's half a man or the man who's half a boy. Basically, he's saying this is for man-children, but like in a wholesome way. The standout character in the movie is Professor Challenger, played by Wallace Beery, a man who doesn't just chew the scenery but literally puts people on top of it. Challenger wants to lead an expedition to South America to prove that dinosaurs are still existing on a plateau in the jungle, and to rescue his colleague Maple White, who was left behind on the plateau. He is joined by the reporter Edward Malone, who is willing to finance this mission, his skeptic colleague Professor Summerlee, the hunter Sir John Roxton, and Maple White's daughter Paula, who was invented for the film just to create a love triangle with Malone and Roxton that sorts itself out pretty quickly. They fell a tree to create a bridge to get onto the plateau, but a brontosaurus knocks the tree down the ravine, so they are stuck there. From then on, it's just a series of dinosaur encounters, with most of them feeling completely separate from the human scenes. You get the occasional insert shots of them reacting to stuff, but aside from a few scenes where they cross over, you could arrange the dinosaur footage in any order and pretend you are just watching a nature documentary. They are also constantly stalked by an evil ape man who doesn't really accomplish anything. Eventually, they discover that Maple White has already died, and they manage to escape from the plateau with a rope provided by their guides who have stayed on the ground and the cute capuchin monkey. They take a brontosaurus that fell from the plateau back to London, but it escapes and after a brief rampage falls into the Thames and swims away. It is a simple narrative, and aside from Challenger's mere screen presence and Summerlee bumbling around studying bugs, the characters aren't really interesting. The true stars are the dinosaurs anyway. They are clearly based on the art of Charles R. Knight, which means for their time they were the most accurate a dinosaur could be. Especially notable is that they are not as sluggish as you might expect from such an old movie. The Brontosaurus is not too heavy to walk on land, and the Allosaurus even has a moment where it jumps to catch a pterosaur in mid-air. The best looking dinosaur is the Agathormas, a ceratopsian which Knight modeled after bits and pieces of Monoclonius and Triceratops. Nowadays it's regarded as just a dubious specimen of Triceratops, but here it really stands out thanks to the spikes and armor on its back and makes the actual Triceratops look boring in comparison. Also, people have been arguing about whether this theropod is a Tyrannosaurus instead of an Allosaurus, but all these models look so similar that I'm just gonna refer to each one as Allosaurus because that's a name actually dropped in the film itself. Willis O'Brien is more famous for his stop motion animation in King Kong 8 years later, but even here you can already admire the details. The dinosaurs are not just rubber puppets, they have internal skeletons and even internal balloons that can inflate and deflate to simulate breathing. The scenes of the Brontosaurus in the mud look completely lifelike even 100 years later. One thing I admire is how much these dinosaurs behave like animals. When the Allosaurus eats a piece of meat, it thrusts its head back in a way that feels very much like a bird or reptile. And after that it grooms itself with its tiny hands. The shot of its eyes glowing in the dark looks legitimately creepy. When the pterosaur accidentally drops its meal, you can feel its frustration as it raises its tiny fists. When the Brontosaurus rampages through London in the climax of the movie, you can see it sniffing lantern posts, and you really get the idea that this is just a confused and scared animal and not a monster acting maliciously. The only moment that took me out was when in the middle of a volcano eruption one Allosaurus decides to attack a fleeing Brontosaurus. Maybe that's where Fallen Kingdom got the idea from. It's a bit of a shame that the sequel to Jurassic Park was also named The Lost World because it has somewhat overshadowed the original. I have to admit, I haven't read Doyle's original Lost World novel. I've never even seen the 1925 movie. The only Lost World adaptation I watched as a kid was this god-awful 1998 version.
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Tyrannosaurus.
Had never seen such bullshit before.
But for this anniversary, I wanted to finally watch the original, and that turned out to be its own conundrum. The Lost World has been public domain since the 1950s because its original copyright of 28 years was not renewed. But because people in the 1920s didn't really think about future film preservation, parts of the movie were lost, and as a result you now get a dozen different versions with different running times depending on whether that particular restoration added any more recently rediscovered footage. What I want is the highest quality, most authentic feeling version possible. Currently, the most viewed version on YouTube is this upload by the channel Timeless Classic Movies from 2012. And according to the description, this was the version from the Lost World Wikipedia article at the time. And I'm sorry, but I find this one close to unwatchable. The entire footage is draped in this dark sepia tone and the resolution looks like someone bootlegged a VHS multiple times and then recorded it with my laptop's shitty webcam.
What the hell are those?
Those are sorry. Knowing what a more careful restoration looks like, I feel bad for anyone who first experienced The Lost World through this video, because it does such a disservice to the actual movie's quality. This cut is just barely over 1 hour long, and the entire time generic classical music is playing in the background. I can skip to any scene, no matter whether it's supposed to be calm, or exciting, or dramatic, and the music will sound the same. Oh yeah, I probably should have mentioned that The Lost World is a silent film. Back then you couldn't synchronize recorded sound with film footage yet, but that doesn't mean people watch those movies in literal silence. There would have been a live orchestra playing music accompanying the film, and more importantly, their music would have reflected the mood of what's currently happening on screen. One of the worst things you can do to your silent movie restoration is slapping some boring classical music on it that doesn't go with the scenes. As far as I know, there exists no original sheet music for The Lost World, so there is nothing stopping you from composing your own soundtrack, like what this artist did, Bassling. And since I'm not a music expert, I cannot make any comments on the quality, aside from the fact that I would prefer music made for a movie from the 1920s to sound authentic to the 1920s. Also, you gotta love those Jurassic Park T-Rex roars. Which brings me to the next version, because the #1 worst thing you can do to a silent movie is try to add the sound back in. The fact that The Lost World has been public domain for so long means that anyone can redistribute it and add their own spin to it. And apparently in 2005 some German company had the brilliant idea to take a movie filmed with the intention of not containing spoken words and dubbing all over it. The German Wikipedia article lists this as the Urzeit Collection DVD, but the name on the actual DVD is Dinos ganz groß Collection. This collection contains 3 movies: The Lost World by Harry O. Hoyt, Journey to the Beginning of Time by Karel Zeman, and Raptor by Jim Wynorski, a Roger Corman produced movie that is 90% recycled footage from Dinosaur and 10% looped footage of one sex scene. I just find it funny that this DVD randomly contains 2 cornerstones of the art of stop motion dinosaurs and then also the worst dinosaur movie of all time. Ironically, the company's name is Best Entertainment AG, and they are no stranger to low effort garbage because they also distributed the infamous cartoons by Dingo Pictures. That probably explains why the audio in this one sounds so half-assed. Whenever there are dinosaurs on the screen, the editor just dumps a bucket full of stock sound effects over the scene. Can you really imagine anyone would prefer to watch this constant noise over pure music? There is the same problem with the spoken words. When the film wants to provide information, context or humor, it will display intertitles. Most of the time the actors are moving their mouths, but it's just so you can roughly imagine what they are probably saying. The moment you try to actually dub over this footage, you just get a mess like in this scene.
Können Sie ihm denn nicht helfen?
Ich bin Mitch von der Gesellschaft für geodätische Landvermessung in Brasilien.
Wir haben etwas sehr Interessantes entdeckt.
Cutting out the intertitles also means that the movie can't have scenes where somebody says something and there's a dramatic pause. Take for example the scene where Professor Challenger asks Edward Malone about his occupation. For context, Challenger hates the press for how they've ridiculed his dinosaur stories. In the silent film version, you can feel the build up when Edward Malone awkwardly looks around and the title card drops saying, I'm a reporter. Cut to Challenger chasing him out of the museum. But since the actor was never filmed actually saying this line, the German dub just rushes through the moment.
Einverstanden. Sie scheinen mir stark genug zu sein. Was ist Ihr Beruf? Journalist.
So yeah, this version sucks. Do not watch it even if you speak German. And obviously, I didn't actually buy that DVD. This version was uploaded to YouTube just last year by a channel named Classic Movie Night. However, this isn't even the original German version, because after scrolling for a bit more, I found this upload from 2013 by a German movie channel called Reload TV. This one is 3 minutes shorter than the one I just mentioned, but the dub is the same, so I am assuming the different runtime comes down just to frame rate, which can lead to great disparity when you're dealing with a running time of 74 minutes. Also, this older one is color tinted, while the newer one is black and white. So it turns out the German dub from 2005 got another release in 2020 on Blu-ray, with a T-Rex on the front that might be a Papo toy and a T-Rex on the back that is directly taken from Jurassic World. That one is black and white, while the 2005 one is color tinted. And I guess I now have to explain what that means. Just like how silent movies are not supposed to be watched in literal silence, the black and white footage wasn't always supposed to be watched in black and white. The film would be soaked in dye to give the entire scene color hues, which would represent certain moods, locations, or times of day. If you watch Nosferatu, for example, and you watch a purely black and white version, there will be scenes where it looks like the vampire walks around in the bright sunlight when that's supposed to kill him. And that's because the scene isn't supposed to look like this, but like this. So you understand that it is a night scene. Of course, it was cheaper to just forego color tinting entirely, so the movies were sometimes just screened in black and white, and the black and white prints tend to be the ones that survive till today. Therefore, you would be no less authentic if you kept the footage in black and white and didn't try to recreate the color tinting. What grinds my gears though is attempts to not just tint the entire scene, as would have been the case at the time, but to recolor the film itself, because so far every colorized Lost World version I have seen on YouTube is just someone running some kind of AI program that tries to predict the colors frame to frame. And while that may color in the faces of the human actors, it makes everything else look incredibly boring. Instead of a lush green jungle, it looks like they are in a bamboo forest during dry season. And you will have a character literally talk about the moonlight, while your nighttime scene looks more like your average overcast day in England. So kudos to the 2005 Best Entertainment AG version for authentically color tinting the footage. Except no, of course this version is ripped from somewhere else. Throughout the movie you can hear a score in the background. It's overshadowed by the voice actors but plays unmuted in the opening credits. This score was composed by Robert Israel. Yes, that is his actual name. Maybe I mispronounced it. And not for some German company that releases Dingo Pictures movies. In the year 2000, French film collector Serge Bromberg released a restoration of The Lost World drawn from 8 prints in total. It runs for 93 minutes, which means the German dub cut out 20 minutes, which gotta be more than just removing the intertitles, and proudly calls itself the most complete reconstruction possible. This version has been uploaded to YouTube in both color tinted and black and white versions, but you can always recognize it by Robert Israel's score, which has probably become the leitmotif for The Lost World nowadays. The YouTube channel Arthur Conan Doyle Encyclopedia uploaded a black and white version of this, and that was actually the version I first wanted to watch, because I thought you can't get more authentic than a YouTube channel with that name and a version that calls itself the most complete reconstruction possible. So I'm watching this version, enjoying it, and then 4 minutes in, this intertitle pops up. Professor Challenger, well-known author and scientist, has returned to London with a strange tale of mammoths, pterodactyls, and other prehistoric monsters. Pterodactyls? Really? You're telling me those filmmakers back in 1925 made a stupid typo like that? Well, as it turns out, the majority of this 2000 restoration came from a black and white Czech print, which meant all the intertitles had to be translated into English and recreated by the restorers. If this typo was forever immortalized in what was supposed to be the definite restoration of the Lost World, that would have been embarrassing. Luckily, eventually some more of the original prints surfaced, complete with original English intertitles. And in 2016, Serge Bromberg made a new restoration, now compiled from 11 different sources. A total running time of 104 minutes, and with Robert Israel reworking his score. In 2017, this version was released by Flicker Alley on Blu-ray, the most high quality version of the Lost World possible. Reminder that 3 years later, the Germans would re-release an inferior version of something they half-assed in 2005. For now, this Flicker Alley version is the definite final cut, which I would recommend to anyone who has not seen the Lost World yet. The color tinting is stronger than in the 2000 version, which works for the blue nights, green jungle and red during the volcano eruption, but might require some getting used to during scenes on the plateau in the day, where the scenes are yellow, or in a cave where Malone proposes to Paula because the entire scene is tinted pink for romanticism. They even have one shot with two colors, when the Allosaurus catches a torch in its mouth. I guess I should also warn you, one of the characters is portrayed by an actor in blackface. And original intertitles also means you have to read his broken English. Robert Israel's score is the most fun part of these restorations because you can tell which compositions from the 2000 version he liked enough to bring back. The old one's opening sounds adventurous and exciting, while the new one starts off slower and more foreboding. Overall, the score of the 2017 version is more bombastic, which you can most clearly hear in the scene with the tree and the Brontosaurus. In the 2000 version, they just fell the tree and it cuts to a reaction shot of the Brontosaurus, but there is no change in the music. In the 2017 version, there's a drum roll and you really feel what an important moment this is, the first contact of the plateau with the outside world. Even if the Brontosaurus doesn't know it yet, this is also the exact moment when it became doomed. Israel already found the perfect theme to portray such a massive herbivore who doesn't give a shit about anything. So he just added more brass instruments to make it sound even fatter. And the part where it knocks over the log and strands the team on the plateau is also more dramatized in the 2017 version. I haven't watched through the entire 2000 version, but I noticed that the score during the Brontosaurus rampage is just Dies Irae from Giuseppe Verdi's Requiem. In the 2017 version, the music during that scene is new, or maybe that's another piece of classical music that I just don't know about. The one other thing I have noticed is how much of a difference the ending makes just based on the order of the shots. In the 2000 version, the final shot is Professor Challenger by himself, devastated by his prized possession destroying London and having escaped into the sea. It feels like a tragic ending. All that's missing is the Oppenheimer stare. But in the 2017 version, the final shot is the Brontosaurus swimming in the sea with a pink tinting symbolizing happiness. It's an uplifting ending that makes the audience cheer that at least the dinosaur is now free to explore the world or swim back home, whatever it wants. And that was The Lost World, and yeah, I can only recommend you check out the 2017 restoration. This one is currently on the Wikipedia article for The Lost World, but without the score by Robert Israel, since a newly created score has its own copyright and would not fall under public domain. So, admittedly, I got this version from the Internet Archive, and I honestly don't have any idea if it's even legally allowed to be there, or if the uploads to YouTube by these random users are legal. So enjoy these as long as you can, or just buy the actual Blu-ray. And make sure you don't get scammed by the Germans. Goodbye.
What are those? Ah, those are Triceratops balloons.